Okay, I know we just said cmd can be used to run a command inside of a container. And it can. In fact, we've even used it in our demos. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But the better and the preferred method of specifying the default app to run inside of a container is via the ENTRYPOINT instruction. How come? Well, first up, it's not a hard and fast rule, okay? We don't have to use ENTRYPOINT, but there are some definite advantages. The way I see it, the biggest advantage is that ENTRYPOINT can't be overridden by specifying commands on the command line at runtime with the docker run command, whereas we can override cmd instructions like this at runtime. Okay, but that can be a good thing and a bad thing, surely. It certainly doesn't sound like a super important reason to prefer it over cmd. And said like that, it's not. The coolness comes in the fact that anything we do specify at the end of the docker run command at runtime, so where we've been typically specifying a command to run inside of our container, well, anything we specify there gets interpreted as arguments to the ENTRYPOINT instruction. I think we should take a look. So we're already in our Dockerfile. Let's finish off this ENTRYPOINT instruction, and we'll do it in exec form this time. Oh no, I can feel it already. Another Hello World example. Well, bear with me. Still here? Okay, any containers we spin up off of images built with this Dockerfile are gonna run the echo command. Okay, well, let's lose this cmd instruction and go and build from it. We'll call it HW2. Now, let's run a container from it. And we'll pass it, hello there. Cool. See what just happened there? The string at the end of the docker run command was passed to ENTRYPOINT as an argument. And just in case it's not clear, how about this? We'll make it interactive. Bin bash. Now, normally, this bin bash bit here would be interpreted as the command to run inside of the container. We've done that a ton of times already, yeah? So what we'd end up with would be an interactive container with bin bash running as PID1 and would be landed inside the container at a bash prompt. But that's what would normally happen. This time, we've got an ENTRYPOINT instruction in our image. So let's hit return and see what happens this time. Well, that's different. So what's happened is instead of interpreting the bin bash string at the end as a command, it's been interpreted as an argument to our ENTRYPOINT command, which remember is echo, yeah? So it's echoed the string bin bash. Now, in a roundabout way, and I've heard other people refer to it as this too, using ENTRYPOINT like this, our containers behave like a binary. In this example here, our container acted like the echo binary. In fact, I think echo is actually a shell built in, but you know what I mean. Using ENTRYPOINT, anything we pass to our container at runtime gets treated as arguments to the ENTRYPOINT instruction. Now obviously echo is just a super simple noddy example. We only use it to demonstrate the point. Well, let's go and change that. And we'll make it Apache to CTL. Quickly add this back up here. Save that. Build from it. Call it Web2. And now let's spin up a container off of it. So we'll run it detached. We'll expose port 80. Now remember, our container's going to execute the Apache2 CTL command, but currently with no arguments. Well, that ain't going to do much good. So we can specify arguments right here. We'll go D foreground. Looks good. Check it's running. Definitely is. And we can actually see our command there. So there we go. Now, this behavior has benefits in the real world too. We could have a single image, but then tweak the personality of any containers based off of it by passing arguments to the ENTRYPOINT command at runtime. Now, let's back up a bit. The same actually goes for CMD instructions in the Dockerfile too. If entry point is specified, CMD instructions in the Dockerfile also get interpreted as arguments, so long as we specify them in exec form. But remember, CMD instructions in the Dockerfile get overridden at runtime by options at the end of the docker run command. Well, that can actually work in our favor. We could specify default parameters to entry point as CMD instructions inside the Dockerfile, but then have the ability to override them at runtime. Anyway, that's entry point, the preferred way to specify the default application to run inside of a container. Can't be overridden on the command line. Well, it can actually by specifying --entry point, but it can't be overridden by simply specifying a command at the end of the docker run command. If we do add strings to the end of the docker run command, they get passed to entry point as arguments, which definitely has its uses. Okay, we're done with entry point. Next up, super simple env.